Good day, and thank you for tuning in 3D, the Daily Divine Direction broadcast. For all of our new listeners and viewers who are tuning in for the very first time, I'm Pastor Pope, and thank you for allowing us to come into your listening and viewing environment. We are here with you from 12:30 p.m. until 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, broadcasting live from the FijiWater.com sponsored studio, where you can discuss careers, finances, entrepreneurship. You can discuss marriage, divorce, raising children, blending families. You can discuss dating and relationships, whatever's in your heart, whatever's on your mind. God is concerned about that which concerns you. And that is the reason that we're here with you in 3D, the Daily Divine Direction broadcast. And as always, the broadcast is brought to you by Fiji Water, Earth's finest water. You may already know that Fiji water comes from Fiji. However, did you know that it is created by nature? It is untouched by man. It starts as a tropical rainfall, which slowly filters through layers of volcanic rock, where the water collects in a natural, sustainable artesian aquifer, where it is bottled right at the source, free from human contact, until you unscrew the blue cap. Fiji Water, Earth's finest water, will be delivered right to your front door when you subscribe for delivery, and you'll save money at FijiWater.com. So I'm going to say to all of our listeners and viewers, with us today will be our contributor, Rebecca Buva Turner, licensed and registered dietitian and nutritionist. Becca, the dietitian, and I will say to you that we are having a little delay in technology, but Becca has text and she will be joining us in a moment. It is all me, not her, but we are delighted as always to have Becca with us. And I know many of you have been asking, when is Becca going to return? Well, here she is. And Becca, it is great to see you. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, can you see me and hear me?
We can hear you and see you. Can you hear me and see me okay? Okay,
Yes,
excellent.
I can.
All of our listeners and viewers have been waiting for you. They've been looking forward to your return. So I'm going to say, as always, Becca, it is delightful to have you with us. And I'm going to turn it over to Becca because you all have been waiting to hear from Becca and not from me.
Well, Pastor Pope, it's so nice to see you again. I'm so happy to be back. It's been a little while, but you know, we're
Schedules.
very happy to be here today. So today I figured I would choose a topic that is a little bit current. I did some research on what, the biggest topics out there are for the general public, just because, I, of course, am so involved in my day-to-day work, and that becomes my topic of interest. But for all of you, I wanted to make sure I chose something that would hopefully be relevant and timely. And something that unfortunately none of us can escape is aging. So I figured I would talk about nutrition for longevity and healthy aging. We're all at some point, if not now, but in the future, going to be facing the realities that come with aging. So typically these could be things related to your muscles not being as strong as they were, your joints not feeling as healthy as they used to, your cardiovascular health might start to take a little bit of a turn. We might need to start monitoring the blood pressure a little bit closer, or the cholesterol levels are starting to creep up. Our cognitive health is another area. So, of course, we think of dementia and Alzheimer's, but the reality is that our cognitive health can start to become impaired long before diagnoses for those types of things come about. And then last but not least, immune health is another part of healthy aging. So making sure that our body is well enough to continue to fight infections, and just continue to be healthy, and fight off diseases and illnesses that might come our way as we age. So, there's differences among these different areas, and I'll definitely touch on the different nutrients and foods that are going to promote those different areas of health. But some main key takeaways just for all of those areas is that cellular aging is what we want to target. So we want to target like helping that process to slow down the aging of our cells. And also making sure that we're personalizing to what's relevant to our health. So different people age differently at different paces. We all have different backgrounds in terms of our genetics, and just our lifestyles that we've lived. So all of those things are going to impact the way that you age uniquely from the way that your spouse, your siblings, your friends, or even, if you have anybody else in your life, like it's your aging is going to look very different from theirs just because of our own unique experiences. And then the last part that is just a key takeaway in general is that aging appetites are also going to have a big impact on nutrition. This might not be as big of an issue if you're in your 40s or 50s, with the exception of postmenopausal women. They might start to see this effect a little bit sooner. It's going to be more so later on, the upper 60s, the 70s, the 80s, where we start to see that impact on appetite. But that's certainly going to affect our ability to take in the nutrients that we need to. So those are just some general things. And now I'll break it down area by area. So we'll start with muscle health. So protein, protein, protein. We need to make sure that we are eating enough protein, ideally from lean sources. So lean red meats, pork, chicken, fish, or if you're vegetarian, those vegetarian sources like tofu, tempeh, beans, nuts and seeds, things like that. Protein is so vital for preserving our muscle mass and our strength as we age. And that actually ties into a lot of these other areas too. So it's going to impact your quality of life, your joint health, your immune health. So those are all considerations, and there's definitely overlap when it comes to muscle health, but protein is number one. But we also want to make sure we're paying attention to nutrients like vitamin D and calcium, magnesium, which are going to be found in your dairy products or things like broccoli. And then our omega-3 fatty acids, which also help to support muscle function and reduce those risks of sarcopenia, which is the age-related muscle loss. So omega-3s, you'll of course find those in your fatty fish like salmon and tuna. Eggs also have omega-3s, different nuts and seeds like chia seeds, walnuts. Those are all going to be great sources of your omega-3s. When it comes to joint health, if this of course ties into muscle health, so making sure that we're getting that protein will have a down the line effect on your joint health. But the foods we want to focus on, again, those omega-3 fatty acids, they're very anti-inflammatory. So they're going to reduce inflammation in our joints to keep them feeling healthy so that we continue to be active. And then that activity, that movement, that muscle building activities, that's going to all tie back into muscle health. So as you can see, there's a lot of overlap, bidirectional flow of impact from all of these different interventions. Antioxidants from fruits and vegetables are also going to be really helpful to protect your joints just because they do have that anti-inflammatory antioxidant effect. Eating your colors, your sweet potatoes, your red cabbage, your carrots, your tomatoes, all different colors of fruits and vegetables are going to be important to get. There are some supplements out there that can be really helpful for joint health as well. Glucosamine, chondroitin, those are two supplements specifically that can be very helpful for joints as you age. So you'll definitely want to talk to your primary care provider for recommendations on supplementation with that. But those are some other things you can consider outside of just your normal diet. Cardiovascular health. I know so many people who, they eat a certain way for so long, and then when they get to, maybe their early to mid 30s, they're like, oh gosh, like my cholesterol is high. I have to start this medication. What's going on? So the impact of aging when it comes to cardiovascular health can start a lot sooner than some of these other areas, or at least we can see the impact of it a lot sooner than some of these other areas potentially. Fiber. Fiber is going to be so helpful for cardiovascular health, limiting salt, making sure we're eating those healthy fats rather than the unhealthy fats. Fruits, veggies, lean proteins, like some of the ones I've already listed, your healthy fats, olive oil, avocado oil, your nuts and seeds, like the walnuts again, and the chia and the flax seeds. These are all going to be things that have not only those healthy fats, but the nuts and seeds are also going to have the fiber. So you're getting kind of like a double benefit when you eat those foods when it comes to cardiovascular health. Whole grains, another great source of fiber, also going to help with fullness, weight management, which is also, of course, something that we all need to be paying attention to as we age. But those are kind of the big ones when it comes to cardiovascular health. All right. Next, we'll talk about cognitive health. So this is your brain function, your memory, cognition, your ability to, perform your job well as we get later into our career. Recall, like remembering different words. These are all part of our cognitive health. Omega-3s, again, they go along for cognitive health as well. But also polyphenols, which is a compound that's going to be found in your berries and fruits, which more so like those darker berries and fruits. So the reds and the purples and the blues. So think blackberries, blueberries, raspberries, strawberries. Those colors are going to be very rich in those polyphenols that will be helpful for cognitive health. Antioxidants, specifically vitamin C and vitamin E, and then your B vitamins are really, really crucial for brain health. All the omega-3s, the polyphenols, those specific antioxidants, they're really going to help protect against cognitive decline and also support your brain function. So you can look at specific supplementation when it comes to antioxidants potentially, but if you're eating all those different fruits, vegetables, other food groups that we talked about for the other areas of your health, you're probably going to be getting enough of those different types of things. All right, last but not least, immune health. So again, antioxidants are going to be so, so important for your immune health, mainly vitamin A, C, D, and E, and then also zinc and selenium. So if you're eating lots of fruits and vegetables, healthy fats, you're probably going to be getting these nutrients through those. They're really a balanced diet of fruits, veggies, lean proteins, whole grains is going to help you maintain your immune function. You can look at specific supplementation if you're interested, but again, it's always best to get it from food. So, all right, I know that was a whole lot of information. So I want to stop and see if you have any questions, Pastor Pope, or if any listeners have any questions that might go along with this topic.
So actually, that was not too much information. It wasn't a lot of information. It was good information.
Okay.
And so we want to run through these categories if we can with Becca today, because Becca, I just had a conversation with my wife about muscle health. Um,
Ah,
she actually brought it up to me because I have declined my weightlifting some because I had an injury to my bicep. So I really want to, and she yesterday was encouraging me to really focus on my protein. So I hear you talk about protein, but I hope everyone was taking notes, and I'm going to tell you the reason why. So as you may have noticed, I was taking notes on muscle health, joint health, cardiovascular health, cognitive health, and immune health. These are all things that are going to lead to a great quality of life. So let's go through this, if you will, category by category again, just so that everyone can take notes. If you were just listening and not taking notes, I'm going to encourage you to take notes. And for those of you that were taking notes, let's really deep dive into some of this with Becca today while we have her. And Becca, talk a little bit more about things that we can do, because I know you, as I always tell everyone, you're the picture of health. So talk a little more about what else we can do with regard to muscle health for protein. I know I take a protein supplement powder. I try to have a protein shake every day. That's one of the things that I do. What else would you recommend that some of our listeners and viewers can do to really enhance their muscle health?
yeah. So protein, I mean, that's going to be the main thing. And we can get that from, of course, your protein rich foods like the meat, poultry, fish, nuts and seeds, things like that. You can absolutely get it through supplementation if you feel like your diet might be lacking in protein or you just want a little extra to fill in your day. There's so many great protein powders out there, so many different types of protein powder, but that's certainly a great way to supplement for a multitude of reasons. Just if you feel like you're not getting enough, you want a little extra, maybe your appetite isn't quite there, or you don't have the same appetite for protein-rich foods that you did at another time in your life, which is very common for postmenopausal women. So a protein supplement can really, really benefit you to make sure that you are getting enough of what you need. But on top of that, we want to make sure we're exercising and we're doing weight-bearing exercises. So it doesn't have to be weightlifting. Certainly weightlifting is going to be a great way to get that type of workout, but things like yoga, Pilates, even just body weight strength activities without using weights at all are all considered weight-bearing exercise. They're all putting tension on your muscles. And that's what's going to help to strengthen them. So it doesn't have to be, your traditional barbell at the gym or, pump and iron. There are other ways to get that weight bearing exercise in just as efficient of a way.
So you
Um,
see how Becca just hit it on the head, because that's one of the things I wanted everyone to hear. It's not just, going to the gym and, as you said, barbells, but doing the body weight, like you said, yoga, push-ups,
yeah,
squats,
any of
things
those
of that nature.
calisthenic type exercises, exactly. Yep.
Yes. Okay, so joint health is real important. I know particularly for me, for someone who's had injuries to my body, for
Mhm.
example. Now you mentioned glucosamine, which is something I swear by. Um, what else can we do when we're suffering from perhaps arthritis?
Mm. So a lot of the same principles we talked about are going to be beneficial if you have joint issues due to arthritis. Any joint issues, arthritis, the reason we feel pain is because there's inflammation. So if we have inflammation, we want to make sure that we're following a very anti-inflammatory diet that's going to minimize the impact of the injury or the arthritis on the joints.
Everyone take these
So
notes.
so an anti-inflammatory, antioxidant rich diet will be really helpful to counteract past injuries, current injuries. So again, your fruits and your vegetables, your healthy fats, whether it be your liquid healthy fats like olive oil or avocado oil or something like that, or your healthy fats that come from more of our solid foods like the fatty fish, um, eggs, nuts and seeds. Those are all going to get you those beneficial, very anti-inflammatory fats. And then simultaneously staying away from foods that we know are very pro-inflammatory or which could worsen the inflammation that's already present. So that's going to be, you know, all those guilty pleasure foods, of course. So your processed foods, your high salt, high fat foods, high unhealthy fat. So things rich in butter or like bacon, things like that. Your added sugars, those are also going to, not do you any favors um, when it comes to inflammation. So really just trying to minimize those foods while still enjoying them in moderation, but trying to mainly choose those whole unprocessed foods primarily in your diet.
Is it true that carbs are really killing us?
No, 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 no.
Okay.
We need carbs. We need carbohydrate.
Okay.
Our
Good.
bodies most efficiently function on around 50% of our diet from carbohydrates. So we need carbs, but we
Did you
want to
say
make sure we're
50 or
choosing
15?
50.
All
So
right, everyone
between
need to hear that. I wanted you to say it out loud because I know I enjoy, I enjoy bread, but I minimize the bread that I eat.
So
But
we just want to make sure we're choosing the right type of carbohydrates. So those whole grain foods, so whole wheat bread, brown rice, quinoa, those high fiber, nutrient rich grain foods, and then also combining it with like your starchy vegetables like sweet potatoes that are higher in fiber, or your starchier vegetables. I'm forgetting, oh, corn. That's another good example. That's a great starchy, high fiber vegetable. Um, What else? Fruits. Fruits are so important for those different immune boosting nutrients, but they also are a great source of fiber and they are carbohydrates. So that's going to be another good one to go for. So really, as long as we're choosing whole fruits, whole high fiber starchy vegetables, and your high quality whole grain, minimally processed grain products, those are the types of carbs we want to be fueling ourselves with.
So, Becca, I'm before we get to cardiovascular health, I want to ask a question because I don't want to miss those last three categories also. But so many people recently have been diagnosed with cancer or literally dying from cancer. What can people do to reduce the possibilities? I know there's no one cure-all, but what can we do to potentially reduce the possibility of cancer?
Yeah, so there's modifiable and unmodifiable risk factors. So the modifiable risk factors that we have control over
Mhm.
are our diet, our activity level, our lifestyle choices, like whether you smoke or not. Diet, the anti-inflammatory, antioxidant rich diet is what is going to promote cancer prevention. A pro-inflammatory diet could potentially increase your risk of developing cancer.
So that makes sense, should make sense for all of us when we
Mhm.
think about that. You want to eat and exercise in ways that it's going to reduce the possibilities of being attacked by cancer cells.
Exactly. And
Oh,
the same is true for cardiovascular disease. A lot of those same foods that could prevent cancer are preventing cardiovascular disease and diabetes. It's a lot of, there's a common denominator here, and it's diet. And if we are choosing a diet rich in whole grains, lean proteins, healthy fats, fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, if we are eating a diet like that, for the most part, we're going to be checking all of these boxes easily.
excellent, excellent. So cardiovascular health. What can we do as we age? Because this is real important because we're all aging every day. What can we do? What specific methods can we use to reduce the potential of cardiovascular issues?
Mhm. Yeah, so watching our salt intake, which tends to be mainly from processed foods in the American diet or eating out, eating fat, but not even just eating fast food, but eating out at a restaurant in general, there's going to be significantly more fat than if you were to prepare those same foods at home. So there's that aspect. And then, of course, with the processing, there's going to be salt added to the food. So salt will impact blood pressure. So that's why we really want to watch out for that. It's also very pro-inflammatory, so it could worsen those inflammatory conditions. So salt is one of the top things to be looking out for. But then when it comes to cholesterol levels, because that's another big impact of cardiovascular health, we want to make sure we're getting enough fiber and we're staying hydrated, because that will that allows you to eat more fiber without having GI issues if you're hydrating
Right.
yourself. Fiber and the healthy fats. So choosing wisely what fats you're consuming, trying to minimize butter, coconut oil, even margarine. We want to watch out more so for those things, avoid those fatty meats like bacon or like a really marbled steak, save that for a special occasion every once in a while, not a regular basis. So choosing the lean proteins, the healthy fats, fiber from fruits, veggies, whole grains, beans, and watching your salt.
Well, here's what's interesting. Diet and exercise. If we focus on those two components, it sounds like we have the ability to really, as you said, create the longevity, you know, to having a
Mhm.
great and have a great quality of life simultaneously.
Yeah, yeah.
So we really have to focus on these things. And then, of course, the cognitive health. So you mentioned vitamin C, vitamin E, and the Bs. Now, I have a question about this. So I take B12.
Mhm.
And one of the things I've observed is that if I take B12, I don't sleep as well at night. I'm great during the day, but I don't sleep as well at night because I'm still full of
Interesting.
energy.
What time of day do you take your B12?
I take it in the morning.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, certainly there's side effects of everything. You know, you also want to look at the supplement that you're taking. Does it contain anything else aside from B12?
Okay.
You know, it's also good to look at caffeine consumption throughout the day. You know, try and figure out if there's, oh,
No,
it
no, go
looks like
ahead.
you've
Go ahead.
I was gonna just try and figure out if there's other factors that could be impacting your sleep aside from that supplement, before saying it's definitely the supplement. But, you know, making
And
it sounds like I know you're active, so it's definitely not due to a lack of activity.
which
Um,
I also must admit though, I swear by B12. I think
yeah.
it's excellent.
Oh,
And
that's great.
that's the only thing I noticed is that and I'll look at the other factors and I'm sure, you'll let me bother you to discuss those things.
Yeah. Good rule of thumb is to avoid caffeine past like 2 p.m. so that it doesn't impact your sleep. Some people can drink coffee and then go right to bed and have no issues for some reason. My husband that is that way. I'm not that way, but in general, a good rule of thumb is to try and avoid caffeine after like 2, maybe 3 p.m. in the afternoon.
Okay, so Andrew doesn't have that problem though.
No.
So, but the vitamin C and the vitamin E, you say those are great for cognitive health.
Yes, cognitive health, immune health, you know, probably a few of these categories are going to be helpful for.
Okay. So I encourage everyone. I take vitamin C every day. I take a chewable. Um, and I love vitamin E. However, my physician said to me that he wanted to do some more research on the positive aspects of it.
Of
So
supplementation.
I'm hearing from you. This is great that vitamin E is good for us. It's good for cognitive health. It's going to be good for immune health, right? Also, right?
Oh, I would never want to recommend something against what your physician is saying. So if your physician is hesitant, you always want to use them as like they're in charge of the ultimate end of,
Okay.
you know, the
But having
decision.
said but having said that, he didn't say it was bad. He just said he wanted to do a little
He
more
wants to
research.
explore. Sure.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but
So generally, when it comes to supplementation, we always want to be a little cautious just because it is a very concentrated form of something. So
okay.
it's going to be preferred to get it through your diet. So there's, you know, you would have to consume a whole lot of vitamin E for it to become harmful. You know, there of course are upper limits on how much we should be consuming in a day. And since it is a fat soluble vitamin, meaning that it gets stored in our fat, we can't necessarily get rid of an excess of it as easily as we could of a water soluble vitamin. So for that reason, supplementation with any of the fat soluble vitamins, we do want to be careful of. But if you're getting it from food, there's not the same level of bioavailability, meaning we may not absorb that much or as much of it as we would from that concentrated supplement form. So you don't have to worry about it being harmful if it's coming from a food source.
That's why I wanted to bring that up to you because we see our physicians once a year for our annual physical, but we're getting
Mhm.
information from you that is going to allow us to make, to include things into our diet and into, our supplements. And
Mhm.
so I want to encourage everyone, take your supplements, do all the things that we're hearing from Becca that are going to enhance the quality of life for us, because we're all big on that. And I know we're coming to an end. I'd love to keep Becca for another 30 minutes, but she has her career to focus on. So, Becca, if there's anything else you would like to share, please share before we go out the air. Our listeners and viewers love you. So every month they're looking forward to seeing you. So
Oh, well, this half hour has absolutely flown by, but I will just leave you all with this, you know, trying to make sure we're following that balanced diet, which is going to supply your fruits, your veggies, your lean protein.